First up is Haunted Mansion, which is the second feature film to come out based on the ride at Disneyland, which is a truly absurd sentence to say. I did not see the first film. It starred Eddie Murphy. I just had no particular desire to see it. I did, however, see the trailer for this new version of it and thought maybe there could actually be something here. I don't think I was correct, unfortunately. I don't know who this film is for, honestly. So I am not necessarily somebody who's obsessed with the ride at Disneyland. In fact, I'm not somebody who's obsessed with the ride at Disneyland. I have many friends who are, and I'm so happy for them. And I was hoping that this film would be for them. I don't get the sense it's for them either. It's rated PG-13, so it's not necessarily like a super it's relatively family friendly, but it's not for little kids. In fact, I'm a total chicken. I fully acknowledge this, which makes the second film I'm going to review this week so ironic to have seen. But I got a little scared at one point just because there are a few jump scares, and those are just, base primal instinct scares. And yeah, anyway, not proud of that. But either way, it's a little bit scary for little kids. It's not particularly mature enough for like a adult audience. It's not a scary movie. There are definitely Easter eggs for super fans of Haunted Mansion the ride, but that does not a movie make. The cast is actually pretty dang decent. It's Lakeith Stanfield, Tiffany Haddish, Owen Wilson, Danny DeVito, Rosario Dawson, Dan Levy, Jamie Lee Curtis, and then it's got Jared Leto as the Hatbox Ghost, which if you're not aware, the Hatbox Ghost is like a very prominent ghost on the ride itself. I don't know how they got Jared Leto to do this. I don't know how much of it he actually did. There's a couple live action things of him, but I'm like, did he do the CG, like motion capture performance? How did he go method as a ghost is my question, because he seems the type to do that, but I don't think he did. Anyway, it just ended up, unfortunately, being a mess of a movie. The premise is that Rosario Dawson and her son, who's played by a kid named Chase Dillon, they move into the Haunted Mansion and then have to deal with the fact that it's a Haunted Mansion, and they bring in, everyone else effectively to help them deal with the issue. It's a silly premise. It could absolutely work. I don't think it particularly works is the problem. There are a couple moments that are like mildly humorous. I think Owen Wilson and Danny DeVito do provide some levity to it. Lakeith Stanfield is so wasted in this role. Like, he is trying his damnedest in it. I'm just like, my dude, you are in a different movie than everyone else. You're not in a Disney Haunted Mansion movie. And it's not an insult to him. I feel bad that he's trying to give an emotional, heartfelt, genuine performance, and yet the situation he's in and the circumstances around him and sort of like some of the animation and the CG and all that stuff, and he deserves a better film than what was made. And then again, going back to those super fans, like, is this worth you going to see just for the fact that you love the Haunted Mansion ride? I don't think so, but I cannot speak to it from that perspective. But generally speaking, I don't think the number of Easter eggs outweigh the issues with the story and the film itself. It's a 2-hour movie that doesn't need to be a 2-hour movie. I cannot speak how it compares to the first one, but I just think overall, maybe we need to stop making the Haunted Mansion. Instead, I would like to offer you the Muppets Haunted Mansion special on Disney Plus instead. I think that is the only acceptable version of a Haunted Mansion adaptation. Add the Muppets to everything. It's that much better. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say skip this Haunted Mansion live action film. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. The next film I have is called Talk to Me, and if you want to talk about intentionally scary movies that do a good job, this is the one to talk about. So I, again, am not a scary movie person. I got a little bit scared by Haunted Mansion, so you can imagine how scared I got by a film that is intentionally meant to be terrifying. I saw this film like a week ago. I have not slept since, which again, I think is more of a reflection on me and my fears, but still, this is a legitimately terrifying film that grows on you too, so be aware. I might not be the best litmus test for how scary it is to a seasoned horror person, but if you are not one of those folks, let me give you this review. It's from directors Danny and Michael Filippo, who are twins. You might know them as Raka Raka on YouTube. They are from Australia, and they're a bundle of chaotic energy, and it was like a little scary watching their YouTube videos and wondering how it was going to translate into a feature film, but I thought they did such a good job. And I almost don't know if it's fair for me to review this film just because I watched half of it with my hands over my eyes because I was so damn scared by it. I was in the last row of the theater just like clinging to the wall, terrified, and I had to keep looking back behind me to make sure like there was nothing in the gap that was going to come out. Anyway, It's a scary movie. The premise is a group of friends discover this sort of embalmed hand and they figure out that they can conjure spirits through it. And nothing good is going to come of that. It stars Sophia Wilde, who is going to be a superstar. She is so good in this. And it's also got Miranda Otto, who you might recognize from Lord of the Rings. But yeah, they just did such a good job with how scary this movie is. I don't think I need to go into plot details. Just, it's going to be a horror movie. I think they did a really good job of capturing how a modern group of people would react to something like this. There's a lot of everyone filming it with their phones and not necessarily stepping in to help. And the sort of group mentality of, oh, you're just doing this for show. You're doing it for clout or whatever it is. I thought that was a really interesting factor. Again, I think it was really well paced. The effects are terrifying of what I saw of them through my hand. No, I saw a fair amount of the movie, which again is haunting me to this day. But yeah, if you like scary movies, I think these guys are definitely going to be ones to watch. Definitely go see this movie itself. If you don't like scary movies, this is absolutely not going to be the movie for you because you are not going to sleep like I have not slept. So Talk to Me is out in theaters now. I'm going to give it a 4.3 out of 5. And then playing a little bit of catch up, I finally saw Oppenheimer, and I'm hoping if you made it this far into the review, you are a friendly audience member, because I'm going to say something that it's not going to say, there's a cult of Chris Nolan, and don't get me wrong, I think Christopher Nolan is a spectacular filmmaker. I do think, however, that sometimes filmmakers hit a certain point and people just stop pushing back on them. I've talked about this repeatedly for many filmmakers, many spectacular filmmakers. I think Oppenheimer is about an hour too long. It's a 3-hour movie, and I think there's a lot of sort of superfluous elements that take away from the storytelling that would have made it a much more interesting movie and moved along better. And I think it's got a lot of bloat, quite frankly. There's almost 2 movies happening in it. There's the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer actually developing the bomb that was dropped. And then there's the story of a political confirmation after for Louis Strauss. Oppenheimer's being played by Cillian Murphy. Louis Strauss is being played by Robert Downey Jr. Again, I think everybody in this film gives a good performance. I think the film is visually stunning. Nolan is a filmmaker who makes films for the theater. So I respect that, but that doesn't mean that you have to put every single thought and every single bit into it. There's a lot of it that gets bogged down in, quite frankly, a lot of the science, which, look, I love science. I think science is amazing, but does every single audience member in the world need to know some of the more specific conversations about how we can do, how we can split these particles or whatever it may be? It's not necessarily compelling in a way that is advancing the story, and it just sort of causes the bloat that I was talking about. This movie also, it's funny to see it having opened against Barbie because, and we talked about this in the roundtable episode about it, but, Chris Nolan makes films that do not necessarily have strong female characters who interact with other strong female characters. Emily Blunt plays Kitty Oppenheimer in this, and she has actually one of the best scenes, I think, in the movie. Florence Pugh plays a woman called Jean Tatlock, who was involved with Robert Oppenheimer for a while. The two don't meet. This film does not pass the Bechdel test at all. And then you've got a film like Barbie that opens, and it's just, so many women and talking about things that are not necessarily having to do with men, versus Oppenheimer was just a bunch of men. Oh yeah, there's women every once in a while. There's some gratuitous nudity for reasons, again, that don't advance the story. And I'm kind of tired of it because we do see a lot of films about the men of history and all this stuff. The fact that, I'm just going to run through the cast list really quickly for you because there are so many, working male actors right now in it, which good for them, but it tells you how many male roles there are and just how many male stories we get in general. And also, World War II is well-trod territory. This is not a story we haven't heard before. But you've got, like I said, Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. You've got Matt Damon, Kenneth Branagh, Benny Safdie, Gary Oldman, Josh Hartnett, Rami Malek, Dane DeHaan, David Krumholtz, Alden Ehrenreich, Matthew Modine, Jason Clarke, Josh Peck, Jack Quaid, and David Dastmalchian. And it's just, like I said, the film is well made. If it had been 30 minutes to an hour shorter, I would have been like, this is one of the best films of the year. I just found myself not invested enough until way too late in the film, where 2 hours in, something more broadly compelling to me happened that I was like, oh, okay, now I'm interested in this last hour of the film, but it took so long to get there that I am just feeling disconnected in general. And if we could have just shaved down from the beginning story, which is like the building of the bomb, and this other parallel story that's happening, which is the confirmation hearing, I think we would have had a much better film. So the question is, my guess is if you really wanted to see it already, and if you wanted to Barbieheimer, you've already seen it. If you were on the fence, I'm not going to push you to see this one. I think you can see it when it comes out on home entertainment, which is, I can hear Christopher Nolan screaming somewhere at me saying this, but I don't necessarily, even though it's a film meant to be seen in theaters, like if you were not already super gung-ho on it, I think you can wait because it is so long and it drags in a lot of places. So yeah, anyway, like I said, well-crafted film, but it didn't resonate with me as personally as I would have hoped. I'm going to give it a 3.7 out of 5. And then the last movie I have this week is called The Beanie Bubble and is out on Apple TV Plus. And this is what I was actually really hoping to like. Beanie Babies are a banned word near my mother because we were so involved in the craze. And I have seen, plenty of documentaries about Beanie Babies, but I was interested to see this because it is a fictionalization about, Ty Warner, who invented Beanie Babies, and the women who help support him, who do not necessarily get as much credit, talking about gender balance in the stories we hear. So Zach Galifianakis plays Ty Warner, which was an interesting choice. I do think he does a decent job in it. He brings sort of a warmth and silliness to the character, which I don't know Ty Warner, but it sort of works for this man who invented, a stuffed animal craze that took over the world for a while. Elizabeth Banks, Sarah Snook, and Geraldine Viswanathan all play these sort of supporting women who helped build the Beanie Empire, who I don't think, quite frankly, any of us knew who they were at the time. And unfortunately, I don't know if this movie is going to be the thing that helps us remember them throughout history. Ironically, as another parallel to Oppenheimer, this film also waits way too long to bring in sort of some of the interesting tactical elements. It's telling things also through a split timeline where Oppenheimer is, the building of the bomb times, and then the confirmation. This is the Beanie craze, and then the mid 80s when Ty Warner and Elizabeth Banks' character were really sort of getting it off the ground. It's interesting because, as someone who lived through the Beanie craze, and also they are one of the first companies really that took major advantage of web presence, and then also, they are the reason probably that eBay is eBay at this point. I lived through it, and this was not a particularly compelling telling of it, which is kind of a bummer. I think some of the documentaries do a better job. I try to think about how angry would my mother get at this particular movie, because one time we turned on one of the docs at her house, and she just started screaming at the TV. I think she'd get angry at it, but mostly because it's just doing a poor job of telling the story. And when you're positioning something as, hey, we're going to tell the story of the underdogs and the women who, weren't given credit or you've never heard it before, but you still keep focusing on Zach Galifianakis' character, I don't know if you're necessarily succeeding in what you set out to do. So unfortunately for me, the Beanie Bubble is a bust, and it's going to get a 2.5 out of 5.